Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast, where we navigate controversial topics, deep dive into life-changing stories, and engage in meaningful conversation. Join us in embracing the beauty of mindful motherhood. I'm your host, Corinne Adele. Welcome, everybody, to the Mindful Mama podcast. Today, we have our very first guest, my husband, and we are doing a very highly requested episode today on Aiden's perspective on home birth and free birth. I get asked this question all the time in my DMs, like, how did I convince Aiden? I thought it would be nice to have him on to share a man's perspective, and hopefully this will be a good episode for you guys to share with your partners, and hopefully he can shed some insight on this subject. So, first of all, if you're new here, 5 years ago, we had our first baby boy, and he was an induced hospital birth. And then we went on to have a home birth with a midwife. And then we had a free birth almost a year ago. So that's kind of our resume of births at the moment. So we have several different stories, several different perspectives, and we can chat about which one was our favorite and why, and go into all of that. But I kind of want to start off with asking the question, before having our hospital birth with Israel and before any of our births, what was your perspective on birth? Like, did you ever think about it? Did you ever have any thought?
Yeah, I think thinking about it, a lot of what I thought birth was from modern entertainment, movies, TV shows. Oh my gosh, my water broke. I'm not having contractions. But let's head to the hospital.
You actually thought that's what birth looked like?
1,000%.
You believe that?
100%.
Okay.
I thought that was, we had our first kid at 23. Mm-hmm. So I was still young and was no education on what it was, but yeah, I totally thought that it was
so your water breaks every time.
I feel some wetness down there.
And then you go to the hospital?
Yeah, they're not contracting. They're not doing anything. Just, my water just broke. It's time to head out.
Yeah, typical.
And I don't feel like I'm stupid for that, but kind of feel like that's a lot of younger men.
Yeah.
That aren't educated in how birth works.
Going into our hospital birth, how did you feel in the moment? Like, did you enjoy the experience? Did you feel safe? Did you feel involved?
I think that even with the slight amount of changes or requests that we had, mostly you had, for what we wanted birth and after birth to look like, we had a lot of pushback right from the get-go, which was unsettling. The postpartum care was horrendous, to be perfectly honest. Like, their scare tactics and fear-mongering into getting you to try to do everything they want you to do. Inject your baby with 7 different things the day after they're born, and just all these things wasn't the greatest experience. I think first time going into it, the birthing experience was the best that it could be for being inside of a hospital. I didn't feel super included until the last 30 minutes of the birth.
When you were holding my
when I was just holding a leg and a foot. Just all these unnecessary interventions is what it is, just coming between you and the baby.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of disruption happening.
Yeah, they talk about that first night not getting any sleep because of the baby. It is absolutely not because of the baby. Mm-hmm. It's because you have a nurse coming in every 20 to 30 minutes. Oh, how's mama? Oh, you're doing good? Are you getting enough sleep? Okay, I'm going to come back in 15 minutes and see if you've got any sleep. And it's like, just leave me alone.
The blood pressure cuff that they won't take off of you, the IV they wonont take out of you, the bed doing all those weird movements.
Looking back at it now, it was a terrible experience. Looking back at it as, 23-year-old Aiden.
All you knew.
All I knew. I would say that it was a okay experience. Like, it wasn't the most amazing thing in the whole world, just because of the couple situations that we had. Looking back on it now, from our perspective of now having a home birth and a free birth, it was horrendous. And I would never
compared.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I would never do it again. I would never probably even allow it again unless it was absolutely the only option left in the world. From where we're at now in life and in the journey of having children, absolutely, I would never go back to a hospital birth.
Okay, so when we very first met up with our midwife and we were considering doing a home birth, do you remember how you felt, like what your fears were and how they were like resolved or dissipated by our midwife?
Yeah, so with our first loss, we decided to go the midwife route, and our first initial meeting was a consultation, which I believe you were pregnant for at the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, like very freshly pregnant. Mm-hmm. And we went to the tiny home, which I miss dearly.
I miss the tiny home.
And you had actually told me that this is the time for us to interview her.
Yes. Yeah. So I think a lot of the times what men don't understand is when it comes to midwifery, and actually you should do this with your OBs as well, but nobody does because they're doctors, so they immediately trust them, right? This is not only a time for like them to get to know you, but for you to interview them to see if you even want them to be at your birth. This is extremely important. I mean, it's the most important decision. If you are going to hire a medical professional, you need to feel 100% on board and aligned with this person. And as a woman, you have God-given intuition and discernment. And if that discernment is off in the slightest, you need to find somebody else. I just had to say that piece because it's very important. And with men, they can play a part in that as well because they're protectors and they have their questions. And this can be the man's I don't know if you want to call it a grilling, but bring all the hard questions.
I went on Google, and I think I typed in something like questions to ask a midwife. So went into it with 10 or 15 questions. Corinne started the chat with our midwife. I was sitting there, listening and observing what was going on, how your guys' interaction was, how you and her were clicking, that kind of thing. And to be honest, probably 70 or 75% of those questions got answered just through her introduction. She goes through like a whole thing of if this, then this, what happens in the case of emergencies. And in reality, like those are the only questions that really mattered to me, being the protector and like being your protector in that space. All of these questions were answered very appropriately to a point that I felt safe putting this situation in her hands.
So do you feel like it made you feel comfortable knowing that she had a role to give you in the emergencies? Like you weren't just going to be like, I have no idea what to do. Like she told you, okay, pretty much in all these cases, you're going to be driving. That's your role. So you feel good about having a specific role. Yeah,
like obviously, and to preface this, I think she said that none of these have ever happened with her.
No, transfers happen, but she said she's never had a death. Most of the transfers are before birth, though.
That's what I mean. It was never a baby. I don't think she's ever had a baby transfer.
You might be right. You might be right. She's never had a baby transfer.
Yeah,
but a mom, I think she's had mom's transfer for like hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
But you actually might be right that she said she's never had a baby transfer.
I think that is a correct statement.
And she's never had a death.
That is another correct statement. Regardless, those statistics make me feel great because, I mean, like, you have to be accepting of the fact that things might happen because things happen at the hospital. Right. Like with hemorrhaging, it happens at the hospital. It happens at home births. Mm-hmm. And there is steps that your midwife, AKA your medical professional, will take if needed.
Let's take a moment to talk about today's first sponsor, FRTIL. Have you been looking for the highest quality supplements that actually make a difference in your energy and overall being? Me too. And I finally found that in FRTIL. FRTIL offers multiple different supplements such as beef liver, zinc, vitamin C, and shilajit in their simplest, purest, most bioavailable form. Now, I've been taking beef liver for years and never really noticed a difference until I switched over to FRTIL. Just a few weeks into taking these, and I noticed a massive shift in my energy. Come to find out, FRTIL uses a freeze drying method to preserve and optimize overall effectiveness in all of their supplements. Something my old beef liver brand did not do. Go to their website, FRTIL, that's FRTIL, and try them out yourself. And don't forget to use my code Corinne10 for 10% off. That's KURIN 10. Details in the show notes. Okay, so I think this is a good segue to go into your perspective on our first home birth. Cicely was born almost 3 years ago.
Tears.
I know. Just give some perspective on how you felt about it in the moment.
Yeah, I think, it was beautiful, obviously. What's the best way to say this? I was in a much different place than I was then than I am now, or even where I was with Flo's birth. As a lot of you may know, I'm a recovering alcoholic. Been sober for a little over 2 years now, but I was absolutely in it at that point in my life.
Yeah, deep depression.
Hiding heavy alcohol use from Corinne, from everyone really, but mostly Corinne because it's who I live with on the day-to-day. So as beautiful as that was, there was a huge disconnect between Corinne and I at that time in our life, in every aspect of life, in our marriage, in our personal life, between me and Israel, like the whole thing. My life was a wreck at that point.
And you and Cicely. We can get into that as well.
Yeah.
I think this is actually a really good subject to talk about, is your relationship with your partner really is going to show in your birth, like where you guys are at. It'll be very apparent how you interact.
Yeah. As far as Cicely's birth, I took the role of, setting up. I set up the pool. I moved the bed. I set out the tarps, blew the pool up, filled it up with water, all this different stuff. I was running around doing all of the setup stuff. There's probably a lot of you guys that have seen the pictures of me on the side of the pool, holding Corinne, holding Cicely. That is probably the extent of what I did for Cicely's
during the
birth.
pushing stage. Yeah.
My mom, not saying anything about my mom, she was very much involved in Cicely's birth, which I'm thankful for, because
I needed it in the moment. I felt much closer to Aiden's mom than I felt to Aiden, and she was my anchor and my rock. But it's sad to look back at all of the birth photos and
they're all with my mom.
See that, see, like, we're laughing, but it's really sad. Like,
I'm in the background, my mom's right there
Aiden
next to her.
should be where Aiden's mom was. And so, although, yes, I had an amazing, beautiful home birth, I also am going to go into this in Cicely's birth. Her birth actually brought a lot of trauma and anxiety out for me. Her birth was the catalyst of a lot of healing that I still need to do. It just kind of like cracked me open. And a lot of that was Aiden and I's marriage at the time. None of that even came to light until 5 or 6 months later. But it's just so crazy how birth can just destroy you in the best ways and help you really get to the roots of your issues.
As good as that birth was for our marriage, it brought our marriage to its core, to its deepest, darkest point.
Well, that's what we needed, though, to get to the bottom.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention how not only was me and Aiden's marriage super rocky and just like super under attack, but Cicely felt it. She felt it my whole pregnancy. And then when she was born, she wanted nothing to do with Aiden.
That's an understatement.
I have never experienced a newborn that was so, I don't even know the right word. Did not want anything to do with Aiden. Honestly, didn't want anything to do with anybody, but Aiden could not help me in any capacity. Like, he couldn't even hold her. he would have to pace around the room while I was showering for 3 minutes while she's screaming. And as soon as I come out of the shower and she can smell me and he's like about to place her back on my chest, she stops crying. I think that a lot happened there was just a lot going on at that time, and it really affected Cicely in the womb and created kind of made her be super attached to me, which of course that's totally normal for newborns, but it was like on another level. And looking back now, like hindsight, it's very obvious that it was very emotional and spiritual because of what we were dealing with at the time.
We're all good now.
Yes.
She is a daddy's girl.
Oh my gosh. Now she's obsessed with Aiden. And when was it that she actually started liking you? Like around a year old?
Deep into us healing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, probably a year, maybe a little bit more before she was lovey-dovey on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so that aside, forgetting about all of our marriage issues, just home birth to a core, how did you feel about it? Like leaving that experience?
I thought it was great. I mean, like the biggest takeaway from it is that you're comfortable all the time. And it's not the husband being comfortable as much. Obviously, that's not super important. I mean, it is important because if you're there to support your wife, being comfortable and being allowed to be
supportive in the ways you want to be supportive, do what you want to do.
Free in your own space.
Yeah.
Is super important. But I mean, comfortable for you. Labored on a ball upstairs. You labored in our bed. You took a shower. You were able to get into a pool in our room with dim lights and no beeping and no IVs and all this stuff. And we got out of the pool and then got into our bed that smells like us. We have all of our pillows. We have
fed snacks and drinks.
We literally had snacks set up on the headboard for you to grab.
Yeah.
The house is the temperature that it should be, that it usually is. And there's not 1,000 people walking around the halls. I feel like after that birth, my eyes were opened a bunch to what home birth could be. And had that boost of confidence of, oh, we can do this. I don't know how long after it was, but I said something along the lines of, oh, we should do a free birth next time.
Aiden and I were in the shower together after having Cicely, and he looked at me and said, do we even need a midwife next time? And he didn't even know what free birth was. He had no clue that was like an option or anything. Like I was like, that's called a free birth. You want to do a free birth? And I was like, I don't know about that. But he like planted that seed in my mind. And I had already been consuming some podcasts that were free birth stories already at that point. But it is very interesting that even at that time when we were so disconnected, that Aiden, I don't know, he just said
had the intuition for it.
Yeah. Just had some sort of like discernment and wisdom of like what I would ultimately desire in a birth. So there was one moment when I gave birth to Cicely that I want to chat about with Aiden. I think it might be the only time you felt fearful, right, in Cicely's birth is she came out tangled up in her cord.
Yeah, that was a little bit stressful.
I forgot to warn him that nuchal cords are incredibly common and normal. About 1/3 of babies are born with their cords wrapped around their neck or their body in some way.
We might be 3 for 3.
No, I don't know anything about Israel.
That's what I'm saying. We might be 3 for 3. I remember him being tied up in it a little bit.
I don't remember, but I didn't warn him about that aspect, and she came out with it around her neck and tightly like
both across her body like an X, like seat belts.
Yeah, like a seatbelt. And so
and then around her waist, like there was a lot of cord with Cicely, I feel like, and it was all over her. And
it was super slippery, and I'm sitting here and I'm trying to like, I didn't know. I was just holding her in shock, and Aiden and my midwife were like doing it together. So what was your perspective on that in the moment? Because then we'll chat about what happened in Florence's birth.
Yeah, I think that's one of the situations where primal instinct kind of kicks in, because I didn't have to think about it right away. I knew that needed to be not there. And thank goodness for Rebecca, because babies are slippery, fresh out the womb.
Especially born in the pool.
Yeah. So Rebecca was holding, are we using her name? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Rebecca was holding Sis.
I was holding her too. There's so many hands.
Corinne had like legs, butt cheeks, and I was doing the business with the cord.
Our skin is our biggest organ, which means it absorbs all the toxins we're exposing ourselves to every day. Because of this, I'm very mindful about the skincare and body care I use for myself. Osea formulates their skincare with seaweed because it's a superfood rich in vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. Different species of seaweed can provide a myriad of benefits, including anti-aging and moisturization. Osea sources their seaweed from different places around the world based on its high mineral content and then combines it with other naturally derived ingredients. Osea just launched their holiday bundles that include full-size items, which are the best deal you can get all year. Plus, if you use my code, you can get an extra 10% off on top of that. Use my code Corinne10, that's Kurin 10 for 10% off, or see the link in my show notes. And it was hard because we're holding her and we're like pulling her tight too. Like
the cord's still attached.
Her closer. Yeah. And done it, but also we're trying to keep her out of the water, like not put her face under the water as well. So that was one thing I wish I would have warned him about, and maybe some birth education for the husbands who know nothing about birth could be helpful in this aspect, to know like there are things that happen that may be a little frightening if you're not educated on them. And
there's blood.
There's a lot of blood. Even normal amounts of blood look like a lot.
Especially in water.
A lot of blood, especially in the water, yes.
There is smells. There is no other smell like birthing a baby.
Okay, so let's move on to Florence's birth, which was our most recent one, almost a year ago. Also, tears. How is she going to be one?
Yeah, right.
And our free birth experience. This was something that Aiden kind of spoke over us 2 years prior, less than 2 years prior. Our girls are 2 under 2. Yeah, it quickly became a desire of mine. We spoke to my midwife about it on many occasions, letting her know, hey, just so you know, like, we're probably not going to call you. We definitely want you there postpartum, but
it was the number one option.
That's ultimately what we desired.
I feel like going into this, I was very prepared for another home birth. Mm-hmm. I kind of figured that it was kind of going to be the same thing with Cicely. Obviously, we were in a different place marriage-wise. I was in a much different place mentally. Obviously, we prayed about it and we trusted God that everything would work itself out. But going into the birth, I was walking on sunshine at that point.
Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorite days ever.
Hey babe, can I go golfing today?
Oh my gosh. Okay, feel free to roast Aiden wherever you want. This man goes golfing while I'm in labor.
I had just gotten new irons and I wanted to go play before the season was done. Okay?
I was in, like, we knew the baby was coming that day.
Oh yeah. We had gone out to our favorite juice and acai bowl bar and gotten acai bowls, and she was laboring at Method, like very obviously.
But they weren't like painful or anything. I could walk around. We went to Target.
Kind of breathing through them at Method. Yeah, I went to Target, got home. I was like, hey, it's like the last sunny day of the year. Can I go catch a quick round?
This man. And I gave him permission. I literally did not care. I know it sounds so stupid and like typical of a man, but I was fine. I actually prefer to labor alone. Like, I don't need a lot. I kind of just want to do it on my own and like have support when I need it, ask for things. but I don't need someone to like hold my hand. I don't need someone to apply counter pressure. I actually hate counter pressure. It makes it 10 times worse for me. I just want to be able to move how I want to move, and like everyone just like give me space. So I did not care, but I did end up calling him because my labor was picking up like crazy.
You called me on the 13th hole, and for anyone that knows, I was 5 over through 13.
What?
Having the game of my life.
Of your life. Oh, sorry, your laboring wife disturbed you to come home.
I was having the game of my life.
Oh my gosh.
She had texted me something along the lines of, it's picking up. It's getting pretty serious. Like these contractions are.
I was pacing the house. The only thing that can help me, I was like literally pacing around the kitchen because that's the only relief I was getting. It was really getting intense. My labor with Florence, again, I'll do a birth story, but it was so up and down. It was like nothing was trackable. I would have contractions that were 17 minutes apart, and then I would have them back to back. I would have ones that felt like transition contractions where I felt like I was going to throw up, and then ones that felt like Braxton Hicks. So it was very like wonky, and I didn't ever really know. I would have like a pattern of feeling like I was in transition, and that's when I called him and said, you need to come home.
Luckily, we live quite close to the golf course that I regular, about 5 minutes. So I beat feet back to the car and raced home, doing 90 and a 45, trying to get home.
Yep. And when you got home, things
drastically changed.
Dissipated.
Yeah, labor slowed.
Yep.
Cool. It was one of those things where like we planned on laboring deep into the night.
Yeah, I mean, my contractions went to like every 20 to 30 minutes at that point, which was weird. It was almost like, I don't know. It was the weirdest labor. So I decided I'm going to try and eat the rest of my acai bowl, and I'm having some contractions still at that point, very sporadic. And every time I'd have a contraction, I felt like I was going to barf again. So I like gave my bowl to Israel, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go lay down in our dark bedroom and labor and maybe try and take a nap. So I went and did that.
And then once the kids hit their pillows, it was go time. And I mean, it happened quite quickly. We'll just hop, skip, and jump over it. Florence was here again with a wrapped up umbilical cord.
Hers was actually more wrapped up than Cicely's. Hers was wrapped around her neck twice and around her body the same way as Cicely, but just an extra wrap around the neck. Aiden caught Florence, which was sweet because you've never caught any of our babies before, and he unwrapped her super calmly, right? You didn't feel any fear at that moment?
I was calm, cool, collected through the whole thing.
Handed her to me, and then I started hysterically laughing because we had a free birth, and I was very happy that we had accomplished that. So how do you feel about a free birth compared to a home birth?
I think that as much as they're the same, they are so different. So yes, you still get the unmet, like if you do decide, I don't know what it's called. Is it a wild pregnancy? Wild pregnancy?
That's no prenatal care.
Yeah, I don't think I like that idea. So I love the unmatched care of a midwife. Postpartum care is amazing too. The differences between our home birth and our home free birth is just so vastly different that they're kind of hard to compare. With our home birth with Cicely, we had my mom, your sister, and then you had our photographer, you had
It felt like a
Rebecca,
party birth.
You had Rebecca's assistant. There was 7 extra people in the house that made it seem like a party. And
every person that enters your birth space changes the dynamic, no matter if they're standing in the corner or if they are doing things for you or to you. It is completely different. And we were actually just talking about this the other day. Like if we had our midwife at Florence's birth, it would have looked entirely different than how it played out. And this was something that we prayed about. Well, I prayed about every single day. I wanted a free birth so badly. It was a major desire of my heart. But it just, all of it, none of it would have happened the way that it did. I probably would have been in a pool. I would have been checked for dilation. I would have known how dilated I was at a certain point. Aiden probably would not have caught Florence and untangled her cord and put her on my chest. I would not have been laughing hysterically the way I did, like having that birth high, like bliss,
the ultimate birth high.
Otherworldly experience that I had free birthing my baby. Like none of that would have happened. The dynamic would have been so vastly different, and I would argue it wouldn't have been as amazing and as special and as like fulfilling for my heart, if that makes sense.
Healing for your heart.
Yeah, healing for us too. I mean, again, Aiden didn't do a ton during Florence's labor, but I didn't need him to, and I don't love the touch. I'm not a physical touch person at all. So during labor, I kind of want to be left alone. But during the birth part, you know, it was just me and him, and Natalia sitting there snapping photos, but
I mean, she didn't have very many seconds to do so.
She didn't. She literally came in as Florence's head was coming out, ran through the door. But yeah, I mean, it was you and I for a good, 15 minutes before she was born. You're just standing bedside holding my hand. Just us in the dark in our room by ourselves having a baby. And that is pretty magical. And I would argue God's design for birth. Not saying midwives are not. I love midwives, but
yeah, like I was saying before, they're hard to compare because even though they're same room, like same bed, same room set up, like nothing much has really changed in our room. Mm-hmm. They're still so vastly different. The difference between Cicely and Florence's birth. Absolutely nothing against Cicely's birth. I love it. I remember parts of that day.
And I frankly needed all of that support at the time because of how our marriage was.
Yeah. And I cherish, what I got to see and experience from that birth. But
it was a stepping stone.
Yeah. Florence's birth is wildly different. It was an experience of a lifetime. Like, I know that there's a huge community of the free birth community out there, right? But to experience that and how primal that is and how close that brings you together as a couple. Like, you want to talk about something bringing you close?
Have a baby together by yourself.
Yeah, do that together.
With nobody else.
Do that together with no one else. And
because it's only you, and you both are taking full responsibility, radical responsibility for whatever happens. You are literally bringing a soul into this earth together. The two people that created that soul are the only two that are bringing them into the world. It just feels right. Like, that's the only way I can describe it, is like, it just feels
like
right.
At your core, it feels right.
Yeah.
Again, back to the primal thing. Like, it's instinctual. It feels like the right thing to do.
Would you have a free birth again?
Yeah, not a wild pregnancy, but I would definitely do a free birth. I love the care that we get from Rebecca. And I mean, prenatal, postpartum, I again would love another free birth. I think that for where we're at in our life and where we're at on the journey of having kids and the responsibility that we've taken and how we've educated ourselves, well, mostly you've educated yourself, and what you've taught me, that free birth is really just the way to go for you and I.
Discernment, prayer, and intuition also matter. One thing that I have mentioned over the past couple of years with both of my girls' births, because they are both born at home, is I had a very specific, like, prayer birth plan, my birth desires that I was asking God for. I had listened to a podcast that talked about this, and this one woman was like, I asked God for very specific things in my birth and he gave them to me. Like, he's so kind. He cares about the details. And she said something along the lines of like, God, I want to see deer in my backyard when I'm laboring, and I want this and this and this. And he literally gave her that. She was laboring and looked out the window and saw a mama deer and a fawn, and the fawn was breastfeeding while she was laboring. Like, God showed up in her birth, and he did that with both Cicely and with Florence. I had very specific birth prayers and desires and wishes. So I always recommend, if you are a Christ follower, you have a relationship with God, praying over your womb, your baby, and your birth from the beginning. And God is so faithful to answer even the smallest details. Like with Cicely's birth, I prayed that it would be snowy. I wanted snow. And literally we had a snowstorm like that day, and Rebecca was like, oh my gosh, it's so dreadful getting over here, the snowstorm. Like, there were just very specific things that I had wanted, and both
we
of
got
those
like
births.
10 inches of snow that day. I think like it was crazy.
Yeah, there were specific things of like how, just sitting there imagining like, what do I want my birth to look like? And just imagining it and then writing those things down and asking God for them. It's just very sweet to see God caring about the details in your birth. And having a free birth was one of those things that was really on my heart. It was something I was desiring, and he set it up
perfectly,
divinely for us. So I have a controversial question to ask Aiden.
Let's give a controversial answer.
Do you believe that the pregnant woman should have full authority over where she wants to birth? So say husband and wife are butting heads. Wife says, I want home birth. Husband says, no way. What do you do in that situation?
So looking at it at face value, to be perfectly honest, yes, the woman does have the final say of what the birth space is going to look like. But here's the caveat. If you have a healthy relationship between husband and wife, I'll come out and say this one. There are moments that husbands do have to submit to their wife's intuition.
Wow.
And
okay. It took me 5 years to finally find non-toxic makeup that's not only nourishing to my skin, but actually performs well. As a previous makeup artist myself, I absolutely refuse to spend my money on makeup products that do not work. Crunchi is the brand that finally converted me. They have personally banished over 10,000 ingredients that do not make the cut into their products that unfortunately is in most of the makeup we use day in and day out. I'm personally obsessed with their cream concealers and their cream blushes, and I finally started wearing lipstick again because I actually feel good about kissing my babies while wearing it. So their lip pencils are a must. Click the link in my show notes and add the code ADVOCATE10 for 10% off your first purchase with Crunchi. That's Crunchi with an I, and make sure to use my link or the code will not work.
And there are situations that, I mean,
maybe you should say that line again.
Like what does the
for
man,
all the men out there,
what does the man know about the birth space? It's not his space. He's not giving birth. It is solely something that belongs to the woman. Like, yes, you were there, but you're along for the ride. Is really what it is.
You're absolutely involved, and as involved as she needs or wants you to be.
No, absolutely. But it should absolutely be a conversation between husband and wife, whatever the dynamic happens to be between the man and woman, you know?
Yeah, I think there needs to be education, because a lot of men like facts. Like you even said, I love the statistics that Rebecca had to share of like, I've never had a baby transfer. We've never had a death. Like those things made you feel good, right? Like men need the hard facts and they need the plan. They need the emergency plan. They need to know what's going to happen. Like they have a plan to keep their baby and their wife safe. But yeah, I think that men, you need to be agreeable. Be more agreeable. Listen to your wife. Because Aiden is right. We do have God-given intuition and discernment. God did not design women in need of saving from men in white coats. If that were the case, when God created Adam and Eve, he also would have created an OB at the same time to make sure that Eve and her baby are safe. So it goes back to literally God's design, the roots, the beginning of mankind. God created our bodies. God created us with a womb. God created our bodies to be intelligent and know. It's physiologically designed. It is fully equipped and fully capable to birth that baby. And without medical assistance, birth is not a medical
emergency.
Yeah, emergency. It doesn't have to be unless you make it one. I don't speak in absolutes for all of you listening. Let's just say that. I say that all the time on Instagram. I don't speak in absolutes, but for the most part, yes, women should be able to give birth to their babies with zero medical interventions.
And where they want to.
Yeah. And where they want to.
But again, I mean, it goes back to having a healthy relationship and communicating with your husband or with your wife. Like, hey, this scares me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't like this aspect of it.
Yeah. Instead of, I think sometimes men can put up a front of just being like, no, we're not going to do that, and not be open to conversation because they're afraid to say that they're scared.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's just going into something that's unknown. Like, as a protector or as the protector of your wife's physical form, spiritual physical form, but here on earth we think more in the physical than we do spiritual a lot of the times. Men look at it as there's not a medical professional, when in reality there is. Midwives are absolutely medical professionals, but there's not a team of them and a bunch of shiny lights and shiny tools and drugs and a huge, cascade of intervention that could possibly be. So they think that is what makes the hospital safe.
To wrap this up, do you have any takeaways, advice, anything that you want to say to the men out there who might be having a hard time with home birth?
Yeah, honestly, I think there's like 3 or 4 really easy steps. I don't think make yourself feel better is even the right to make yourself feel confident in trusting your wife or your baby mama or whatever it is, trusting that her intuition is correct and that trust in her that home birth is right for you, and ask the hard questions. Have a conversation with your partner and say, hey, here's my questions, comments, concerns. Write them out so you can have a level head during the conversation. Interview your midwife. Ask the hard questions. Get the hard answers, If you are a Christ follower, pray about it. I think that those 3 things are like the biggest things, or if you're not a Christ follower, unfortunately, the first 2 things. But those 3 things would be how I would address it. I think that as a supportive husband or supportive man in the relationship, you should trust your partner's wife's intuition in the situation and know that she truly does want what's best for not only herself, but the baby and for you. And knowing that the situation, no matter what the circumstance, is going to be God-breathed. Going into it, she has the best of intentions. She's not going to argue with you about it just because. She's going to argue about it because she's passionate about it, and it's something that she wants. And that is the point where you need to check your ego and
educate yourself
and really kind of self-reflect on, why am I so against this? Because there's nothing to be against at that point.
Get to the root of that.
Yeah, what are you scared of? Really? Because that's what it's going to be.
Right. I mean, that's what it is.
It's the fear of the unknown.
It is. Yeah. And I think what Aiden said was really good. And I kind of wanted to piggyback off of, nobody wants the baby to be healthy and whole more than the mother. not even the father, nobody else in this world wants for her baby to be perfectly healthy and whole than the mother. And the mother is not going to purposely put herself into danger under any circumstances just because. So I think that's something to remember as well. And I know I've said this multiple times, but it's kind of my thing. I like to tell people is like, we have God-given intuition. These women are trying to listen to their intuition. And it's really hard when a man who doesn't have that God-given intuition, but still probably has really good intentions, is coming and pushing back on this intuition that she has. And that's usually why the conversation can become so difficult, because there's a protector who just wants to make sure that everything is safe. And then there's a woman who's like, well, I have this God-given intuition, this discernment. My body was designed to physiologically give birth, and just them like, butting heads in that area. But there is hope, and men can be turned to the home birth side. And it just takes a little conversation, open, honest conversation. Calm conversation. And education, I think, is very important. I always tell people who are asking me, get the statistics, because men like statistics, and have them. There's some really good documentaries. I have home birth resources on my Instagram. If you follow me, I have a highlight that's called Home Birth. A lot of really good documentaries over there that you and your partner can watch together. And then watching home birth YouTube videos online as well, depending on your husband's comfortability, because a lot of them are very raw, naked. So there are like a list of more modest births out there. You just kind of have to look for them. But yeah, there's a lot of resources out there for men that are searching. And I hope that this podcast can add to those resources and can be shared amongst couples that are looking into it. Do you feel complete? Like you've said everything that you wanted to say in this episode? Yeah, I don't think there's anything else that can be touched on. I feel like this is a great introduction into home birth from the aspect of a husband. All right, so I think that's going to wrap up this episode. I'm sure we'll be touching on birth again in the future. Aiden's going to be a regular guest. We have several different subjects that we're going to speak on, like circumcision. That is going to be a good topic to talk about. And a couple of other things. I don't know. We might touch on addiction in the future. There's a lot of different things. I think Aiden wanted to talk about the decision for me to be a stay-at-home mom, even when we financially were very strapped, and why that was important to us and how we made it work. So a lot of good episodes to come in the future. So with that, I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys. Bye. And that concludes today's episode. If you found value in this conversation or resonate with it in any way, I'd love for you to leave me a review on whatever platform you're listening in on and share about it on social media. Your support means the world. For more content like this, you can follow me at Corinne Adele on all platforms. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.